Hey everyone, it's the signing day special at BuckeyeScoop.com. Kind of a Gives in the Bank recruiting podcast with myself, Marc Givler. We got Bill Greene here. We have Alex Gleitman here. Again, it's signing day. It's an exciting time on the recruiting calendar. I think, especially if you're an Ohio State fan, with all the great players that are now officially Buckeyes. I'm sure there's a lot of excitement about this class from the fan base, and I'm sure the coaches as well. We're going to just kind of do a roundtable here today. We're going to talk about just all the different things with from the exciting parts of this class to the things that you guys are going to want to discuss in terms of instant impact guys and maybe some of the sleepers. And we're just going to kind of go around the horn here and do probably 5 or 6 topics, kind of put a bow on the class, and maybe look forward to what the next 6 weeks might look like as well, as there is, of course, still the late signing period. But I mean, first of all, let's start with this. Ohio State signed a lot of great classes here, in recent years, especially. Bill, we'll start with you on this. Where does this class stack up for you in terms of some of the other recent Ohio State classes?
I think it's as good as any they've had recently. It's a lot better than last year's class, in my opinion. You hear people, like, when they see this type of class, the first reaction would be like, oh my God, what a class. If you want to compete with Clemson, you want to compete with Bama, you have to have, oh my God, just about every year. And it almost has to be with every position group, because when you get stung a year or two in a row in the same position, like they did with defensive back recruiting, it shows up like a couple of years later, like we're seeing right now, where, Jordan Battle would look really good in that defensive backfield right now. So I think, if you want to stay with the big dogs year after year, it kind of has to be, oh my God, what a class, almost every year.
Yeah, it's a special group. I agree. Alex, you're looking at this. You see a lot of the East Coast guys. You see a lot of guys maybe we don't see. They missed out a little bit on Tyvon Malone, but they're getting a couple guys. Kyle Mccord, Marvin Harrison. I mean, just your take on this class as a whole, and looks like they've got some East Coast flavor again to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Bill. I think, you look at this class and I think it is better top to bottom than last year's class. There's obviously, I think, some position groups that you could argue are better, but I think top to bottom better. It's right up there. I'm trying to think of the best class since I've started covering Ohio State. 2017 stands out to me. What was it? That 2013 class with all those guys. I mean, that might, when you talk about what they became, that might be the best class ever. The 2008 Brew Crew class was excellent as well, and those guys contributed to a lot of wins. This class has the potential to be up there with those. And, you mentioned some East Coast guys. I think a guy who, weirdly enough, does not get a lot of credit. Maybe it's because of who's coming in behind him or how early he committed or the fact that, you have CJ Stroud in front of him. But Kyle Mccord, I saw him as a freshman at the opening regional in New Jersey. I had no clue who he was. You had Tyson Fomacon, who's at Clemson right now. He'll probably never start there, but he was committed to Clemson at the time. You have a number of other guys who were highly rated and going to big Power 5 programs. And I thought this kid was the best kid there as a freshman. And I found out it was Kyle Mccord, and I just kept following him and saw him a few other times throughout the years. He does it all. I mean, he can make all the throws. He works hard. He's got a great attitude. He's a great leader. He could move. He's not a statue back there. He's not Justin Fields or Terrell Pryor, but maybe he's a little bit more like Joe Burrow to some extent with his ability to move. Maybe not that good, but he's better than Dwayne Haskins was moving in the pocket and things like that. So I think that's a kid a lot of people don't give credit for. Marvin Harrison's also not a very outspoken kid, but he's a pro. I mean, you talk to that kid, the way he answers questions and goes about his business, he's clearly learned from his dad, who's an NFL Hall of Fame receiver. So, you talk about those guys, really, really in my neck of the woods. And And I think they just are two excellent pieces of this class.
Yeah, it was funny. You kind of mentioned 17. I thought was maybe had a chance to be the best. Certainly was the best since 13 for me. Now I look at this, it's like every 4 years they sign one of these like classes that, you know, could produce 5 first-round draft picks, that type of class. And I do think this class has some potential there. Let's dive into that. Who we'll start with you here, Bill. Who is the star of this class on offense and defense?
Well, offensively for me, you know, the easy answer is Emeka Egbuka. I mean, that kid's got everything he needs to be a superstar, be an NFL player. But I'm going to kind of look at Trayvon Henderson. I've never seen him in person, but that junior film is just unbelievable, I think. And if he can keep his speed and the ability to make people miss as he gets bigger and stronger, I mean, that kid's got a chance to be really special. And I think he's a bell cow back. He's not a guy that you would look to split carries with, kind of like Teague is or Sermon or, you know, this guy's an every down player, catch the ball. He's going to block. He can do everything. And I won't be surprised field next year in some capacity. I think they'll get him carries next year. So Egbuka, I think, is the easy answer. I love Mccord too. I think Alex is dead on there. I think people are kind of overlooking Kyle McCord because of what's ahead of him and behind. But that kid's really special too. So, but if I got to pick one, I'm going to go with Trayvon Henderson just because of the explosion, you know, that the ability to hit the home run that we're not seeing right now.
Yeah, Alex, who do you have on offense as kind of your star of the class?
I'm going to go Egbuka. I'll take the easy way out. He's a 5-star, bona fide 5-star kid. I think Bill said on the board the other day, this kid, if you watch him, he could play defensive back at this level and be a first-round pick. He's that talented. He's that athletic. I think, you know, from what I've talked to people about him, the work ethic and the determination, and it's all there. I expect him to come in next year, be a part of the receiver rotation, and, you know, potentially be a first-round pick, if not, you know, second-round pick, something like that, in 3 to 4 years.
I am going to go off the board a little bit here. I think he's plug and play, and I think he's multiple position guy. I'm going to go with Donovan Jackson. I think Donovan, he could play tackle. He doesn't have that ideal tackle body. He's not 6'6", but he's pretty long. He's probably 6'3.5", 6'4". He's got good wingspan. Unbelievable feet, unbelievable technique, unbelievable compete level. So if you needed tackle help in a pinch, absolutely could do that. I think he'll probably settle in at guard, where I think he's the best guy they've signed for that position, probably since Wyatt Davis. Now, Wyatt is probably the best guard prospect I've ever seen in person at the high school level. I watched him against St. X his senior year, and it was unbelievable. But Donovan's a different player than Wyatt. I think Wyatt does it with this type of physically imposing, intimidating style of play. And Donovan's mean. I don't want to take away anything from Donovan on the mean streak level, but Donovan's just, it's technique, it's footwork, it's hand placement, it's positioning, just so sound, so consistent, and I think could play at guard early if they needed him to. Now, hopefully they don't need him to. I don't think you ever want to have to play a freshman offensive lineman if you don't have to. But I think Donovan can help you at multiple spots. And of course he could play center if they wanted him to. I don't think they're going to need him to do that. I think the center pipeline's good enough right now, but you talk about someone who can play up and down the line. To me, if there's a safest bet on the offense to be an NFL player, I do think it might be Donovan Jackson. So I'm gonna go a little off the board there, but all right, we'll fire it back to you, Bill. Defensive star of the class.
Well, the easy one would be Jack Sawyer, you know, but, you know, with the need that we're seeing right now, and it's a position where you can play as a freshman. You know, we're seeing what Elias Ricks has done this year at LSU. I mean, you can play on the corner young, and I love those corners, Hancock and J.K. Johnson. I just think it's really, really are special. It won't shock me if one of them is in the rotation next year, and maybe both of them get time next year. I mean, that's a problem spot for Ohio State right now. And sometimes, you look at a problem spot and you think it's either inexperience or it's lack of talent. And I almost think it's a lack of talent there, which makes me think these talented kids, they just might have a chance to play next year. So I'm going to go with these two as twins for my defensive in this one, not just a player. And I love those two, and I think they're exactly what Ohio State needs right now.
Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, could go easy again with Jack Sawyer. Everyone knows he's the third Bosa. He's going to play right away. He's at a position to need, but I'm going to go off the board a little bit too. I'm going to go Reed Carrico. I think Reed Carrico, and I said this with Tom on the Morning Scoop a couple days back, I think Reed Carrico could be that vintage Ohio State linebacker. When you think of AJ Hawk or Bobby Carpenter or James Laurinaitis or Chris Spielman, just your hardworking blue collar, Midwest type of guy he is athletic. I mean, he can move sideline to sideline. He can rush the passer. He could drop in coverage. He could do all that stuff, but he's just a hard-nosed kid who's going to give you 110%, 4 to 6, A to B on every single play. He's going to take to coaching. He's going to be, first one in the locker room, or weight room, one of the last guys out of there. I'm not going to say he's surefire. Very few people are surefire, but I really am excited to see what this kid could do at the linebacker position. I think he's versatile. He could play multiple positions.
Yeah, I'm not going to go off the board here. It's Jack Sawyer. Sorry guys, it's Jack. Watched Zach Harrison as a young player. I thought when Zach Harrison was a senior and Jack Sawyer was a sophomore, that Jack was already ahead of Zach Harrison. So I think he comes in, and then Zach ended up as an 18-year-old starting in a college football semifinal. So I think Jack Sawyer comes in immediately. Will they start him? Probably not. I think you're going to have too many veteran defensive ends that would kind of maybe shake up the room a little bit if you did that, but he's going to play a lot. I've always said he's Joey Bosa's body with Nick Bosa's dedication to football. That's what I think Jack is. I'd be stunned if he's not out there playing quite a bit next year. And I think he's a 3-and-done first round pick type of guy. That the only thing that could happen is if injuries derail him. I don't see a way he fails outside of that, which every player who suits up takes that risk. So all goes well on that front. He's going to be a star. This is a little bit of a similar question, but we're kind of going to do it anyway, because there's going to be some overlap in what we just talked about, but just because you're a star player or the star of the class, that doesn't always mean you're the first on the field. We've seen guys who maybe take 2 or 3 years. Marshawn Lattimore was not an instant impact guy. So in that vein, who's going to be on the field next year? And maybe if you even want to get away from Jack Sawyer, who maybe aren't people talking about enough as a guy who may play next year? Bill?
I've kind of already mentioned a couple of them with those two, so I think have a shot. I think Trayvon Henderson has a shot. Sawyer, absolutely, like you mentioned. Donovan Jackson, for sure, absolutely. Just want to kind of go off the board a little bit here. Is a chance that Kyle Mccord comes in and beats out Stroud and Miller? Can that happen? I won't say it can't. We've seen freshmen start on, playoff teams. I wouldn't say I'm expecting that to happen, but I'm telling you what, that kid's really good. And I'm not going to be blown away if he's at least a 2 and maybe pushes Stroud, who I think is going to be the starter. I think Mccord can push him. So that's going to be interesting for me to see, when you get to fall camp. Where's Kyle Mccord in the mix?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good pick because he's getting in there early. So he's going to have a shot starting in January to learn the offense and to get reps. And it behooves Ohio State's offensive staff to get all three of these guys reps because they got to see what they have going into the fall. So that's interesting. That's an interesting, that'll be an interesting message board topic, I'm sure, over the next 12 months. So, Alex, please don't take my guy, but go ahead and give us your guy.
It's interesting. I mean, Bill mentioned the corners. I could see all the receivers. I think they're all ready to step into a rotation right away. You got Mccord, you got the running backs you look at the needs, Jack Sawyer's obviously there. The running backs are there. So I think all those guys are candidates. The one guy who I think could somewhat be a little bit of a surprise, and it's really because of how thin the position is going to be after this year, is Sam Hart at tight end. We don't know what Jeremy Ruckert's going to do. I think he's going to come back, but that's not a sure thing at this point. He could decide, you know what, my stock's not going to get much higher, getting 10 catches a season, and I'm just going to go to the pros and take my chance and try to get to that second contract, right? Like he could do that. I don't think he will. But let's assume Rucker comes back. Farrell and Houseman are gone. They have Corey Rao, who's a walk-on transfer from SMU, who might be back. They have Kate Stover, who's a converted defensive player. And then they have Joe Royer, who was a freshman this year that didn't really play any. So that room to me is wide open, and they love to go 2 tight ends a lot, sometimes 3 tight ends. And so if Sam Hart can come in and prove that he could block at this level, he's got a chance to play right away. So I think the other guys that I mentioned are probably more likely, but he's a guy where I look at the position groups and the opportunity, it's certainly there for him. And he's coming in early. He's enrolling early. So that will be big for him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get to my guy here in a second, but I like the early opportunities for the defensive backs, as Bill mentioned, and as Alex also mentioned. It's hard to imagine one of J.K. Johnson and Jordan Hancock not figuring into the mix next year. I personally, from what I've seen, I would probably side with Johnson. I think he's a little more physically ready, but yeah. And then I'll throw out well, actually I'm going to hold this one because he's going to be on another topic for me. So I'm not even going to say, not going to complete that thought until later. My guy though is Michael Hall. I think Michael Hall is going to be in the defensive tackle rotation next year. I think he's an absolute stud. I think he's not so much in the terms of recruiting rankings. I think the recruiting rankings have started to figure him out a little bit and realize, yes, guy's probably a top 100 player, but I'm not so sure the fans have been as excited about him as maybe they should be. I think if he was from Texas or California, everyone would be losing their mind over getting Michael Hall, but he's from Streetsboro, Ohio, and he doesn't say much and he just kind of goes about his business. So he's an explosive guy. I think a prototype 3 tech, super long, super athletic, plays hard. They do need bodies there. We don't know what Togiai and Garrett are going to do yet. I tend to think at least one of them is going to leave. But so there's going to be opportunities, even if they're both back, there's still going to be opportunities there. I don't think anyone has really jumped up from the second team or the third team and really just taken a stranglehold on snaps for next year. So, I think Michael Hall is going to play next year. So we'll see how that goes. Let's move on to, I think, what might be the favorite topic that everyone has. You guys out there, you love talking about the underdogs and this guy's underrated or this guy's a sleeper. So, Bill, who is the sleeper of this class? It's got to be a guy who's not ranked super high.
I know Andre Turrentine is ranked ahead of Jansen Dunn by most services. I think that's way off. I think Jansen Dunn, while he has a huge bust potential, I think he's got a huge boom potential. There's a wide range there that I see. You watch the film and he plays all over the place and he hasn't specialized in a position yet. I think he's perfect for the single high. I think he's a more athletic Jordan Fuller who, if he pops, you got a Malik. So we'll see, but he could also be a guy that never finds his way, never finds a spot. They move him around. He gets too big for safety. They put him at linebacker. They try him at wide receiver. He could be one of those too, but man, I love what I see out of that kid just for raw ability. If I got to pick a sleeper, I'm going with Jansen Dunn.
Go for it, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, Dunn was my guy too. I think, you know, the athletic ability and the fit there at the one high safety spot is just tremendous. I think he's to Bill's point, sky's the limit there. I'm gonna go though with it's cheating a little bit because they're never ranked high, but Jesse Mirko, a punter, I just think that is. I mean, Tress will love that one, but I think it's just he's going to come in right away, and it's not a guarantee, but he's probably going to be the starting punter for the next 4 years. And that can, you know, that's extremely important when you get into a close game, either in the Big Ten or in the college football playoff. I mean, they need that guy to perform. And, you know, they did their research on this kid. He's, you know, from Australia, and they did their Zooms and they saw videos and things like that. And, you know, they felt it was worth going out and offering him a scholarship, and he'll be here in January. So he'll get a head start, and it'll be him and Michael O'Shaughnessy, a walk-on punter from Columbus, who will battle it out for that punter job. So, you know, punters, kickers, they're never ranked high, but, you know, I'm going to sneak in Jesse Mirko here.
Yeah, I didn't complete my thought a minute ago, and my thought was Jansen Dunn. I've been on this bandwagon for a long time. I really have. So if I'm wrong, I'm extra wrong. But I see a freak athlete there. I think you know, again, I think Bill made a really good point actually that I hadn't quite considered before. But if they just let him go at safety, don't experiment here. Don't try him at corner. Don't try him in the slot. Just put him back there, free safety. Let him go. Let him learn. If that's what happens, I think he is a very special safety prospect. He's a prototype athletically. I think he's got great genes. Dad was a really good basketball player. I struggle to compare anyone to Malik Hooker, so I'm not going to go that far here. Just because I think Malik Hooker played the position in his 1 year starting at Ohio State, maybe better than I've ever seen him played at Ohio State. But there are some similarities on the pro. If you look at the athletic profile and the background, there are some similarities there. So I think that's obviously intriguing. All right, I'm going to throw this right back to Alex here. What position do you think was the strongest in this class? And I know that's going to be a tough one, just because when you've signed so many highly ranked guys that you've filled so many of your needs, this could be tough. But Alex, you got to pick one here. What position group is the strongest in this class?
Yeah, for me, it comes down to DBs and wide receivers. I'm going to go with DBs because it checks the box of talent, checks the box of filling a need, a big need, maybe the biggest need. And the numbers, I mean, there's 5 guys, at least maybe 6, depending on where Jalen Johnson ends up. I tend to think it's linebacker, but I know a lot of people still have him ranked as a safety. You know, you have the quantity, you have the quality, and then you check the box on filling a big need. And while I think the receivers, you know, pound for pound are incredible and rival any position group across the country, look what they brought in last year. Was it a need? You always need playmakers, but it wasn't as big of a need as DB. So I give the nod to the DBs.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Bill, what are your thoughts here on that? Is there a position group for you that's the strongest?
I have to stick with Alex here, and I mean these mainly because of the need. I mean, I think, you know, I kind of like the guys they brought in last year. I wish they would have kept Clark Phillips. The need just makes it the most important group to me. The talent is amazing there. You know, the wide receiver talent's special, but if, you know, Ballard and Igbuka and Harrison, if they all decide to redshirt next year, it won't hurt Ohio State at all. You know, those DBs, somebody's going to be on the field next year in that group. They're going to count on one of those guys at least to be in the rotation. And I think it kind of covers up, you know, some recruiting failures that have been in the past in that position, you know, and that's why he was brought back in. That's his specialty. He can recruit big time players, and he did it again, you know, a couple of weeks after he was back. He started doing his magic. So I'm rolling with those DBs.
Yeah, I'll go off the board here just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue against that. It's hard to argue against the secondary. But what about running back? I mean, God bless Tony Alford, but that was a mess last year. And I don't think a lot of that was his fault. I mean, I think he thought he had two guys who probably told him they were coming, and then within a couple of weeks he had neither of them, and it became just a total kind of a sore subject, I guess, for Ohio State on the recruiting front there. They had to get, first of all, they had to get two guys in this class. They had to get two good ones. They did that. But I think more importantly than getting two good ones, they needed to get a star, and I think they got a star. I think there's a lot of solid running backs on this roster right now. I don't know that there's a star. I think Trayvon Henderson is going to be a star. And so not only did you get two really good ones, Evan Pryor's a heck of a player as well. Not only did you get two good ones, but I think you got a legitimate star. I think you got two guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield as well, which, I continue to hear we're starting to see it a little bit, but I think Ryan Day and that offensive staff would like to throw it to the running backs even more than they do now. I just don't know that they really have the personnel to do that right now. And so these guys will open up more doors for the offense with their ability as pass catchers. And so I just thought that was a home run class for Tony Alford. I thought, my gosh, did he take a lot of heat the last, 12 or 18 months. And I just thought he came out and he really nailed this class at the running back position. So that's what I'm going to go with there.
Good thing he wasn't fired at least 100 times, like the message boards had him fired, right?
Yes. And probably for the best that he was not fired. Probably for the best. I'm not sure they would have got Trayvon Henderson and Evan Pryor had that happened. Yeah. So, all right. We don't love to focus on the negative, and it's really, there's not a lot of negative going on here right now, but Alex, was there a position group where there's still some work left? They didn't maybe do as much as they need to yet. Anything there as far as maybe whether you want to call it a weakness or just a to be determined, or just something to work on moving forward here these next few weeks?
Yeah, no brainer for me. Offensive tackle. I just think, you look at the roster and where the talent is, where again, you don't know, but I'll use last week as an example against Michigan State, or 2 weeks ago, whatever that was, when we knew there was going to be, we probably knew there was going to be three offensive linemen out before the general public did. And we're sitting there trying to figure out who's playing right tackle. And, Paris Johnson was healthy. He's probably the guy, but when you have to go past, when you can't figure out who's going to play right tackle, I mean, that's a problem. Max Ray came in and did an awesome job. I thought tremendous job. I was not expecting that. I thought he did an awesome job. And so maybe you have some more players in DeJuan Jones and Max Ray and Paris Johnson than you thought you did. But I still think with Thayer Munford leaving, Nick Petit-Frere about to be a senior, Paris Johnson, you might look at him as, if he starts next year, he's probably a 3-year guy. I think the need at offensive tackle in the last two classes has been there. And I think to land only one guy in Paris Johnson that you can look at and say, I feel pretty confident he's going to be a starting offensive tackle at Ohio State, and a good one. The guys they got last year, they could pan out, but they're all low floor, high ceiling guys. Zen Michalski, again, I think he's a kid who has a ton of potential, very high ceiling, but the bust out potential is pretty high there too. So to not land JC Latham, to not land Tristan Lee, I just think that was a huge miss for these guys. And I think it's imperative that they get two surefire prospects at tackle in 2022.
Bill, you first of all, do you agree with Alex? I know offensive line is always a thing for you. Do you agree with Alex, or are you going a different direction here?
No, that's pretty easy to agree there. The Latham thing was a killer. Because we all legitimately thought they had him, or were at least, the favorite, and, didn't get him. And, Tristan Lee, I never felt they were in there. By God, you got to fight it out. You need tackles, and then even on top of losing the tackles, I mean, there was a kid, Jager Burton, that I really liked. And I know he's an inside guy, but I like football players, and I thought he was a really good football player. We went into this cycle saying that they absolutely needed to get 4, and we thought 3 of them would be tackles. We thought all 4 would be studs. Get off to the great start with Donovan Jackson. I do like Ben Christman too, but I just think they fell short again on O-line. And, if Stud was recruiting the way Heartline recruits or Kerry Combs recruits, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's nobody gets all A pluses at every position group that, and O-line's hard, but boy, you just expected more this year. And it puts so much pressure on next year when right now you really can't look and say, well, like we do every year, a year out, it's always, oh, we're for all these 5-star, 4-star kids. I don't see it right now for Ohio State. I don't think they're in very good shape on the O-line at all for 2022. And this is after getting busted up in this class, 2021. So, that's always going to be the area that stick out every year, that there are misses, or at least one miss. So whether it's numbers, talent, combination of both, this is not a complete class on the O-line for 2021.
Yeah, I think they obviously missed the number here. It was supposed to be 4. It doesn't, I mean, maybe it will be. It doesn't sound like it's going to be. It sounds like it's going to be 3. They could always try and get one of these Ohio kids here at the last minute, but I think the hay's in the barn. I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, I like Ben Christman quite a bit. I love Donovan Jackson. Mahalski, who I did see in person, is better. I'll say better than I thought he would be. He's further along than I thought he would be. He is a good I think he's a very good prospect, but he's further along than I thought he would be. But yeah, I mean, you needed another one. And like Bill said, I know they're being mentioned with some guys. I know, Dewberry and Zach Rice and some of these other guys, Gunnar Givens, I know they've been mentioned, but I don't know that the reality is very positive there in terms of where they actually sit with a lot of these guys. And then, you've lost Miller to Clemson. You haven't offered
they probably get Keonta Goodwin, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's at least a decent one, right?
Right. So that's a good, that's a good one.
That's about it though.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot you can kind of hang your hat on, but who knows? Maybe this will be a weird year. Cause we've done this the last couple of years where it's like, oh, they're going to get, all these guys, they're going to get JC Latham and Justin Rogers, and they're going to get all these different guys. And then they don't. So maybe this year in 22, it'll be kind of the opposite of like, well, it doesn't look that great. But then we look at it in June and they've got Zach Rice and they've, maybe some things pop off there. So we'll see. But yeah, it's, and again, I think it's kind of unfortunate this year. Like, look, they signed an unbelievable class. So so in the spirit of that question, it's got to be something. And there is a little bit of a nitpicking going on there just because of the incredible things they've done at some of the other positions. So it is what it is. Unless you guys have anything else, I would like to kind of move to what is left, which is not a whole lot, but there's a lot more, I think, intrigue this year for the month of January than there has been the last few years. There has not been much going on after the early signing period the last couple of years, really at all. And this year, that's not the case. There are still 2 very, very big fish out there. Rajon Davis, a top 100 linebacker out of California, currently committed to LSU, has been telling me and others for a couple weeks now that he's not going to sign in December, that he's going to wait until February. There is also JT Tuimoloau, 5-star defensive lineman out of Washington, which would be one unbelievable cap on this recruiting class if that goes down in February. So those 2 are still out there. Bill, let's start with you. Your thoughts on those 2, where things stand, chances for Ohio State.
Obviously feel better about Tuimoloau, and I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt right now of Oregon and Bama and all that. And that's, I don't know where that's coming from because the kid really he really plays his cards close to the vest. Everything I'm hearing is that Ohio State is positioned really, really well, but the kid is not stressing over recruiting right now. He's just not. He really wants to take visits. And am I going to be shocked if he doesn't sign in February? Day, the second signing day? No, I'm not going to be. He could be a guy that waits. And just to see if things open up, let's see how the vaccine goes. Maybe things pop and maybe visits are opened up in April. I could see him waiting that long. So we're going to hang on every word from JT Tuimoloau. I think we're way early in his recruiting process, and I don't think he's focused on it right now. So it's going to be a while, but I think Ohio State is positioned really well to get him. Hartline set the tone there, handed it off to Larry Johnson, doing a great job. G. Scott Jr., Senior, Emeka going there makes it a lot easier to go a couple thousand miles from home when you have some familiar faces there. So I think they're in really good shape there. Rajon Davis, you've done a good job covering this, Mark, and I've done, what I can on my end. I've never had that kid sold to LSU from the day he committed to LSU. And now, with him not signing, I feel really confident that he's not going to LSU. And Ohio State's in a battle. Does the kid decide to just stay close to home? USC's looking a lot better right now than they were a year ago. It's a viable option for him. Of the two, I think Ohio State's better positioned for Tuimoloau. But, hearing Rajon Davis not going to sign early, that had to be music to Ohio State's ears. And I think there's a lot of confidence there that Al might be able to pull this one off. So I would say, I'm pretty confident on both kids, really, with Tuimoloau more than Davis.
Alex, what are your thoughts there? And then, of course, after that, if you have anything else to add in terms of anything that could be going on in January, but it really just seems like it's those two right now.
Yeah, I think it's those two. I think Bill really summarized it perfectly. I think Ohio State's in a good spot with JT. I have them as the leader. I think Alabama's a real threat. I think Oregon, or, probably more so than Washington, if he chooses to stay closer to home, is the threat there. But I think with Rajon Davis, it's going to be interesting. I think the relationships, which is where it's usually won, is in Ohio State's corner. He's been to Ohio State twice, I believe, on his own dime. And I think Al Washington, I think he's done a really good job here. I know that there's been optimism that they could eventually turn that one. They were hoping for visits to be able to do it. And Rajon may still make another visit, I'm hearing, to Ohio State in January. I know they wanted to come last week for the Michigan game. Obviously that didn't happen, but I think the relationships are probably in Ohio State's corner. And I think what Bill said, is it going to come down to staying closer to home and going to USC, or is it going to be, maybe taking a little leap of faith and trusting the relationship with Al Washington? And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I will say, in talking to some people close to the Arizona State program, that there is some confidence. They actually had him on campus for, one of those unofficial visit type weekends, I think a couple weeks back, for one of their games. And I think that there's some confidence that if he does choose to stay closer to home, that Arizona State might be able to beat out USC, just from the Arizona State side of things. I'm not saying I'm predicting that. I think it is going to be Ohio State or USC in the end. So that's interesting. The one other thing I'll add to watch, I think we're about to see the Wild West when it comes to the transfer portal. I don't know how much Ohio State's going to dip their toes into that water, because they don't need an influx of talent the same way, Greg Schiano at Rutgers might be doing, or, Mark Stoops at Kentucky might look to do, or Tennessee with Jeremy Pruitt might look to do. I think, though, you've seen Ohio State with Justin Fields, with Trey Sermon, go and be really selective where there is an area of need and go get a guy who they feel can compete. Maybe not be the starter. Trey Sermon's not a starter right now, but he's obviously a pretty big contributor and will be a big piece of them potentially winning a national championship this year. And I think, with the NCAA about to vote to approve transfers to be eligible immediately one time with no penalty, that is something. It's virtually free agency in college football. And that is going to be something to watch this January to see if Ohio State does anything. Do they go for defensive backs? Do they go for a tight end? Do they, if we do see transfers from certain positions, you know, it's going to go the other way too. You know, I'm not saying a quarterback for Ohio State's going to transfer out, but someone could. And do you bring in a veteran to have in that room with, you know, the younger guys that they have right now? So it's going to be really interesting to watch what happens there over the next few months.
Yeah, I think they'll kind of let early entry to the NFL draft and kind of how they finish here dictate it. My thing with Tuamaloau, they need another defensive lineman in this class. I would not feel all that comfortable with 3. And while the ones they have are very good, I just think they need more bodies. And so why on earth haven't they been offering more defensive linemen? Why on earth haven't we been hearing about even maybe guys they haven't offered, but they're communicating with? Why aren't we hearing about that? Well, it's either because they feel really, really good about JT or they're incompetent. And I don't think they're incompetent. So I think Larry Johnson has probably earned the benefit of the doubt on the competence meter. So I think there's a very quiet confidence on that one, that it's going to take quite a turn here the next whatever it's going to be, if it's going to be 6 weeks or if it's going to be 3 months or whatever it's going to be. I think it's going to have to take quite a turn for it to not end up in Ohio State's favor on that one. The Rajon Davis one, yes, you guys kind of hit on all of that. The one thing I would add is, what on earth is Corey Foreman going to do? And could that, Rajon Davis and Corey Foreman are not teammates. They are not a package deal. They are very good friends. They did take visits together at various points. I believe they're in the same 7-on-7 program out there. So they are very close. And so does that break a tie between Ohio State and USC if Corey Foreman ends up at USC? Does it give Arizona State some type of leverage or something if he surprises and goes to Arizona State, as has been rumored could be a possibility? I think that's something to watch with Foreman, but I like the relationships like you mentioned, Alex. I think Al Washington, doesn't get a visit for the last 12 months, is recruiting against the defending national champions. Yes, they're having their issues off the field, which is, well, really on and off the field, which is contributing to this, but to stick with this the way he has and to have them on the doorstep here, that would be one of the better ones I've seen. That would be one of the better recruiting jobs I've seen. I think of, landing a Raekwon McMillan or a Baron Browning or a Von Bell. This would be on that level for me of just an individual, just an outstanding recruiting job. I think he's done a great job just to get him on the doorstep here. And I think they've got a real shot, but I agree with Bill. I feel better about JT right now. I think that one is, you can't call it a lock, certainly, just because I don't think JT talks to enough people to really even be able to get to that level of a read on him. But I think there is a quiet confidence there in the background. So we will see. But like we talked about here a few minutes ago, for the first time in a few years, I think there's going to be some intrigue in January. There's been nothing. I mean, the Jahmyr Gibbs thing lasted about a week last year, and then it just blew up immediately. I mean, there's very, very little to talk about in January the last few years, but that's going to change this year. So, we'll be on top of those things as well. So, I think that's going to do it. We didn't go player by player. Quite frankly, if you go on BuckeyeScoop.com, we're all going to have in-depth breakdowns of the class that you can read. If you player by player, position by position, grading the class. I think Alex is going to have some superlatives to go over. Bill's going to do what he does every year with the in-depth look at the class. So if you felt like this was a little too vague, go on the website, and we've got a lot of in-depth stuff that you can read on each of these guys, each of these positions. But we appreciate everyone listening. Again, check us out on BuckeyeScoop.com and read our content and interact with us. We'll be on the board answering questions all day that you guys have. Bill's got an all-day chat on signing day. So lots of stuff over there. Appreciate you listening. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the site.